And the question today is this: what will we create next, so that those who come after us can dream even bigger? You are part of that current, a single link in the long chain of those who once asked, why? What comes next? Maybe you will not invent anything, but you can be the one who chooses to preserve what is good. Maybe you will not build the next great technology, but you can be the one who helps guide it with kindness and with wisdom. When you close your eyes, think of everything humankind has accomplished, from the ashes of ancient forests to the flickering light of the device you are holding. You are the culmination of millions of ideas, once whispered, carved into stone, written into books, and encoded into bits. And if you feel overwhelmed, remember this: it all began with one simple question: who are we, and what could we become? Trust. And if one idea can power the whole world, then the most important question is always, who are we using it to serve? When the first humans painted on cave walls, they were not trying to create art. They were trying to remember a deer, a hand, a red stain were more than just images. They were memories. Humans have always told stories to understand, to share, to survive. Stories are how we remember the past, how we teach our children, how we pass on both hope and fear. When writing was born, culture began to live on paper, on clay, on stone. A poem can outlive an entire dynasty. A melody can travel through 1,000 years and still touch the heart of the listener. Art does not help us survive. It gives us something worth surviving for. When war ends, people do not just count the dead, they rewrite the tragedies. In paintings, in music, in film, from Homer to Shakespeare, from folk songs to hip-hop, every culture has created something to tell the story of itself. And then, media was born. Paper, radio waves, television, the internet. Stories began to spread farther than ever before. An article could change a nation. A photograph could stop a war. A movie could change how the world sees an issue. But that power is a double-edged sword. Media can build, but it can also manipulate. The right story can heal. The wrong story can destroy. Culture is not only found in the grand and the noble. It is in the lullaby, in the food, in the clothing, in the way we say hello. Every people, every community leaves behind a layer of culture stacked upon the ones before, forming the shared tapestry of human memory. Culture helps us stand apart, but it also helps us come together. When you hear a sad song in a language you do not understand and still feel tears in your eyes, that is culture. Culture knows no borders. It is the bridge between time, space, and the human heart. In the age of information, whoever controls the story controls the mind. But the real question is, what story are we telling about ourselves? And do we have the courage to change that story if we know it is not true? Ever since humans first used stone as a tool, the world has never been the same. The first hammer did not just break rock. It set off a chain reaction that would last tens of thousands of years. From stone tools to metal, from the wheel to the steam engine, from electricity to computers. Each invention did not just change work, it changed how humans thought about themselves. The phone in your hand has more processing power than the spacecraft that took people to the moon. We have shrunk the world into the palm of our hands and expanded our imagination all the way to the stars. Then, artificial intelligence was born. Not just a tool, but artificial intellect, a reflection of the human mind. The big question is no longer, what can we do? It is now, what should we do? Technology opens up dreams. to cure illness, to close distances, to understand the universe. But it also opens up fear of losing privacy, losing jobs, losing control. We are living in an era where human beings can create wonders with just a few taps. But the question remains, are we wise enough to guide those wonders toward kindness? From the oil lamp to satellites in outer space, it all began with a spark, an idea, and an idea is never neutral. It is a seed. Depending on how we care for it, it can bloom into a flower or into fire. 100 ideas have changed the world, but it is you who will write the next 100. This world never stands still, but if we pause and truly listen, we will realize every generation carries its own question. The Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of the Rights of Man, the Constitution. For the first time in history, humans declared all people are created equal. Not everyone agreed, but the seed had been planted, and it could never be buried again. The idea of the right to live, to speak, the right to choose, spread faster than any army ever could. Democracy did not come from a single battle. It came from thousands of brave voices rising up. Women demanded the right to vote. The enslaved demanded the right to be human. The poor demanded the right to learn, to receive care. And slowly, step by step, the world began to listen. Freedom is not a destination. It is a journey, long, slow, but irreversible. Human rights are not favors granted. They are something we are born with. Democracy is not perfect, but as Churchill once said, it is the worst form of government except for all the others that have been tried. Today, we still see injustice. We still see oppression. But what is different now is this: people know it is wrong. We do not yet live in a perfect world, but we live in a world that knows it can be better. And that is the greatest legacy of the Enlightenment, the belief that we can choose the path we walk. Freedom is not a gift. It is a responsibility, and every generation must learn how to protect it, not with violence, but with reason, with dialogue, with the courage to truly listen to one another. In the beginning, people traded whatever they had: a fish for a handful of rice, a clay pot for a piece of cloth. But trade slowly became more complicated, because no one could carry a whole herd of cattle just to get a single axe. And then an idea was born: money. It had no real value on its own, but it was trusted by everyone. A thin piece of paper, but once recognized by the community, it became a symbol of labor, of time, and of belief. Money is not just a tool for exchange. It is the shared language of the world. And as money began to move, the world started spinning to a different rhythm. People no longer made only what they needed. They began to make what others needed. Markets became cities. Cities became ports. Ports became global trade centers. From this, capitalism was born, an idea built on accumulation, investment, and profit. Those who had more could create more. Those who created more could hire others. The economic engine began to spin, faster, larger, and further beyond the reach of any single individual. But not everyone shared in the rewards equally. Socialism emerged as a response, calling for fairness, for redistribution, and for placing the needs of the many above the profit of the few. Both systems, capitalism and socialism, represented two different views of the same core question: human beings and the value of labor. And the world began to debate, to choose, to experiment, and to make mistakes. Then came globalization, borders opened. A shirt could be designed in Italy, sewn in Vietnam, and sold in the United States. Goods, capital, ideas traveled across continents, but they also carried inequality, exploitation, and crisis. Economics was no longer just numbers. It became politics. It became power. It became a reason for war, and also a reason for cooperation. People began to ask, what is the point of growth if it drains the earth dry? What is the point of profit if someone is left with nowhere to live? New ideas began to emerge. The circular economy, sustainable development, social enterprises. Economics, like money, is neither good nor bad. It is simply powerful, and it must be guided by something greater than profit. Ethics. From trading a handful of rice for a fish to sending millions of dollars with a single click, that journey began with something that seemed simple. About wisdom, about trust. These ideas were never meant to be written down in books. They were meant to live inside the human heart. Aristotle categorized the world. He counted, he measured, he observed. And for the first time, philosophy touched science. In the West, people began exploring the world through reason. In the East, they began exploring the self through introspection. Both journeys, though they moved in different directions, led to the same place: human consciousness. Philosophy is not about answering. It is about training the mind to ask the right questions. When we ask, "Who am I?" we are knocking on the deepest room of our own mind. When we ask, "What is justice?" we are not looking for a legal code. We are searching for what feels right in our soul. Philosophy is like a small oil lamp in the long night of ignorance. It does not light the whole path, but it shines just enough to keep us moving forward. The ideas of Socrates, Plato, Confucius, Laozi no longer belong to the places they were born. They have crossed borders, crossed languages, and even crossed time. When a child today asks, "Why should I be good?" they are continuing a journey that human beings began thousands of years ago. Philosophy is not dead. It has only changed shape, from lectures into songs, from ancient books into quiet conversations. And within each of us, there is always a part sitting silently on a porch, watching the rain fall, and wondering, am I living the right way? There were nights when humanity looked up at the sky, and instead of praying, they began to measure. Science did not begin with answers. It began with doubt. Why does the apple fall? Why does the moon not fall? Newton sat beneath a tree, and from that moment, the law of gravity was born. Not because he saw something new, but because he looked at something old in a completely different way. From apples to planets, from wheels to galaxies, everything followed rules. The idea that the universe could be understood, that nature had structure and reason, changed everything. Instead of fearing lightning, we began to measure electricity. Instead of worshiping the stars, we calculated their orbits. The microscope looked deeper than the eye could see. The telescope reached farther than human limits. Darwin said that life is not fixed. It evolves, adapts, selects. Einstein said that time is not fixed. It bends, it stretches, it depends on the observer. With each century, humanity broke through a limit that once seemed untouchable. We once believed Earth was the center. Then we discovered we were only a speck of dust. We once believed humans were supreme. Then we realized we are only a small branch on the tree of life. But it is in the collapse of pride that true understanding begins. Science does not strip the world of mystery. It makes the truth more magical than myth. Light is not just something that shines into our eyes. It is particles. It is waves. It is the language of the universe. A tiny cell contains the blueprint of all life. A single atom holds enough energy to shake the world. The idea that we can understand even just a small part of how the world works is a miracle in itself. Science does not destroy the sacred. It simply brings the sacred into this very reality. No miracles needed, because the universe itself is already a miracle. And the most beautiful part is this: the journey is not over. Maybe we will never know everything, but that very unknowing is what keeps us awake. Look up at the night sky, and you will see the questions are still there, and the journey is still going on. There was a time when people lived under the shadow of monarchy, where one ruled and all others bowed their heads. But then, new ideas began to leak out. Across borders, through books, through whispers in taverns and schools. Liberty, a simple word, but once it was written down, it shook the entire world. Thinkers of the Enlightenment, like Locke, Rousseau, and Voltaire, asked questions not meant for kings, but meant for everyone. Who gave one person the right to rule over all? Why should someone born in a castle have more power than someone born in a shack? The idea that power does not come from heaven, but from the people, lit fires the world had never seen before. From America to France, from Haiti to South America, revolutions broke out. Not just with guns, but with ideals. The first great documents were written, but from the quiet agreements between strangers. But living together has never been easy. Someone takes too much land. Someone steals food. A child cries because there is nothing to eat. And so, a rule is needed. That is how laws began, not from courtrooms or kings, but from something simple, a promise. I will not take from you if you do not take from me. I will watch the fire tonight, and you will harvest the crops tomorrow. Tiny agreements, but within them, the seeds of civilization were already planted. From there, a powerful idea began to grow. Responsibility, duty, fairness. None of these came from genius minds, but from a primal need to survive together. Then one day, someone planted a tree on the other side of the river. And when the tree grew tall, that person stood before it and said, "This is mine," a sentence that sounded harmless, but it carried within it an idea that would shape all of humanity. Ownership. That idea simple, yet full of power. It could be the beginning of peace, or the start of war. It could lead to cooperation, or to conflict. But because of it, we learned to build walls, to store things, to protect what we claim. And then we learned how to build not just with our hands, but with rules and shared beliefs. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. The people who once fled from storms were now building structures that touched the sky. Those who once shared their last drop of water were now creating marketplaces, gathering for meetings, holding ceremonies. From wild, scattered tribes, human beings began to form societies, places where no one was everything, but everyone was something. The story was no longer I, but we. We live. We believe. We protect one another. A community is not just a place to stay. It is a place to belong. There is something strange that has existed since the earliest times. Humans believe in things they cannot see. When thunder roared across the sky, when the sun set and refused to rise, they did not just fear, they prayed. Out of the darkness, big ideas began to take shape. About gods, about fate, about sacred forces beyond human understanding. The Egyptians built pyramids to send the soul into the heavens. The Greeks told stories of Zeus, Athena, and Hades. The Hindus spoke of reincarnation. The Chinese honored their ancestors. The Jews carved the words of God into stone. Faith was never just belief. It was a map for the soul, a compass for action. From that, the first concepts of good and evil were born, of what should be done and what must never be done. Sinan, invisible thing, but as heavy as stone. And because of sin, humans began to seek something. Salvation. Buddha taught letting go. Christ taught forgiveness. Allah taught surrender and justice. Though the paths are different, they all share one truth. Human beings need to be guided. Religion, whether ancient or modern, has always shaped moral systems that influence laws, art, and even war. A hymn can lift a soul to the heavens. A sermon can spark a holy war. From temples to synagogues, from statues to paintings, religious art is the trace left behind by a sacred longing. Because when no one answered, humans began to draw hope. And in every civilization, you will see the same thing. People never stop asking about the divine. Faith can divide, but it can also unite. It can lead to killing, but it can also lead to salvation. From the eyes of someone in prayer, you will see the deepest part of humanity, the desire to be understood and to be forgiven. There was a time when questions were considered dangerous, not because they led to the wrong answers, but because they led to something even more frightening. Thinking is the seed of change. From Athens to Luoyang, from the pine forests of Greece to the stone steps of ancient China, wise men began asking the questions no one dared to ask. Socrates never wrote books. He only asked. He asked his students. He asked strangers in the street. He asked himself, what does it mean to live a good life? What is justice? Do I really know the things I think I know? Plato, his student, wrote down their conversations. And ever since then, the world has never thought the same way again. In the East, Confucius walked through hundreds of villages, not to preach, but to awaken ancient memory about kindness, about righteousness, about rituals. You are hearing this, while billions of stars are still silently burning in the darkness. But have you ever asked yourself, whose world are you really living in? Not the world of kings, not the world of rulers, not the world of those who hold wealth, power, or armies, but the world of ideas. Small, invisible, quiet, yet indestructible. Before there was writing, before there was the wheel, before there were skyscrapers and maps, the world was shaped by things no one could see. A spark, a word, a crude stone tool, a story told beside the fire on a cold winter night. We do not know the name of the first person who spoke. No one ever captured the face of the first human who created fire. But everything we know today is their legacy. When our ancestors looked up at the sky and whispered, "What am I in this vast universe? Why am I here?" That question, though never answered, has echoed through every generation, and it still reaches your heart, even in the 21st century. Tonight, you do not need to go anywhere. You do not need to leave this room. You do not need to leave the warmth of the bed you are lying in. Just listen, and let your mind drift back in time, to the moment when humans did not yet know they were human, when we were just a small species, trembling deep in the forest, but carrying within us the beginnings of great questions. A fire first, to fight the cold. But then, it became a gathering place. It became the center of the very first stories. It became a symbol of Willand of knowledge. A strange sound accidentally escaped from someone's mouth, then repeated, then turned into a word, then a sentence, and then a language. Language no just communication. But magic, it connects one person to another. It turns thought into reality. It gives shape to emotions. A sharpened stone knot, just an object, but an extension of the mind. That first tool rough, clumsy, was a silent declaration that we will not live like other creatures. We will create what has never existed before. And then, around the fire, once the hunger had passed, once the hands no longer trembled, once the night had grown still, someone told a story, not to survive, but to remember, to believe, to explain what they could not yet understand. And from that, myths were born. Tonight, I will tell you about those things. Gently, without rushing, as if you were lying beneath a distant night, beside a flickering fire, listening to your ancestors whisper about the origins of everything. Not to teach you something new, but to awaken what has always been inside your heart. Because maybe you are not just sleeping, you are returning to the place where it all began. Every great journey starts with small groups of people. From wandering bands of hunters, humans began to settle beside rivers, at the foot of mountains, where the soil was rich and the fresh water flowed. A single hut, then another, then 10 more. A village took shape built not just from wood and stone,